In the far reaches of space, humanity had long been dismissed by the other alien races. They were seen as a primitive species, not worthy of much attention or concern. Most alien species believed that humans would never amount to anything in the grand scheme of the universe. They were too weak, too small, and too inexperienced in the ways of space travel. No one thought the humans could pose any real threat, but they were wrong. And soon, the universe would know just how wrong they were. Captain Ben Carter stood on the bridge of the Earthship Horizon, looking out into the vast expanse of space. He had been in command of the Horizon for 5 years, and in that time, he had seen his fair share of strange and dangerous things. But today was different. Today something was coming, something he could feel deep in his bones. It was more than just a sense of dread. It was the feeling of being watched, of being hunted. And Ben wasn't sure who was out there. The ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Jason Clark, was at his station, scanning the communication channels for any signs of activity. Ben could tell by the officer's tense posture that something was wrong. The usual chatter from other ships, alien signals, and the hum of normal space traffic had been replaced with a strange silence. "Captain, we've just received a message," Jason said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "It's a direct transmission, encrypted. The source is unknown." Ben's heart skipped a beat. A direct transmission from an unknown source wasn't something to take lightly. It could mean anything from a diplomatic envoy to an alien ship preparing to attack. He nodded and turned toward his communications officer. "Open the channel," Ben ordered, his voice steady but firm. Jason hesitated for a moment before he pressed a few buttons on his console. The screen in front of him flickered, and then a garbled message appeared. The words were strange, coming from a language no human had ever heard before. But then the message began to clear, and a voice came through. "This is a warning," the voice said, its tone cold and harsh. "Never strike at humans. They won't ever let you escape." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had started. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence on the bridge. No one spoke. No one moved. The crew members were still processing what they had just heard. Ben Carter's mind raced. He had heard of the Kalari before. They were a group of mercenaries who had made a name for themselves by taking on dangerous jobs for the highest bidder. But they were not known for making threats. They were not the kind to warn their enemies. They were the kind to destroy them. He looked around at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for instructions. Ben took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "Give me a report on the Kalari," he said, his voice firm but calm. "I want to know everything we can about them." Jason quickly tapped a few commands into his console, and within seconds, a report began to appear on the screen. "The Kalari are a mercenary group," Captain Jason said, reading from the report. "They're known for being ruthless, efficient, and willing to work for anyone who can pay. They're not interested in diplomacy or alliances. They only care about the job, and they do whatever it takes to complete it." Ben frowned. It made sense. The Kalari had never been known to offer warnings. They were the type to strike first, ask questions later. This threat, this warning was something new, something that made Ben uneasy. "What does it mean?" he muttered to himself. "Why would they send us a warning?" As he pondered the message, the ship's sensors officer, Lieutenant Megan Hayes, spoke up. "Captain, we've detected something," she said, her voice tight with tension. "There's a ship approaching, fast. It's not one of ours, and it's not responding to our hails." Ben's stomach tightened. He had a bad feeling about this. He turned to face his crew, all of whom were now on edge. "Red alert," he commanded. "All hands to battle stations. Prepare for possible combat." The crew scrambled into action. Jason worked to triangulate the incoming ship's position while Megan adjusted the ship's sensors to get a clearer picture. Ben stood at the front of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he tried to make sense of the situation. Everything was happening so fast. The warning, the strange ship, the silence it, all pointed to something big, something dangerous. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the unknown ship dropped out of warp speed right in front of the horizon. It was a massive vessel, easily 3 times the size of the Earth ship. Its dark, jagged edges and cold metallic surface made it look like a creature from a nightmare. Ben's heart sank. "Captain, we're being hailed," Jason reported, his voice shaky. "Put it through," Ben said, his voice calm despite the tension rising in his chest. The screen flickered once more, and the image of a tall alien figure appeared. It was humanoid, but unlike anything Ben had ever seen before. The alien's skin was a dull gray, its eyes bright yellow slits that seemed to pierce through the screen. Its mouth was thin and sharp, and it spoke with a voice that was deep and guttural. "We are the Kalari," it said. "This is your final warning. Leave now, or we will make you leave." Ben felt a chill run down his spine. The message was clear. The Kalari were here, and they were not going to back down. But the warning still echoed in his mind. Never strike at humans. They won't ever let you escape. There was something about the tone of the alien's voice that sent a shiver through Ben's bones. The Kalari might have thought they were untouchable, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. "Full speed ahead," Ben ordered, his voice cold. "Take us into position. We're not backing down." The crew was ready, and the Horizon was a ship built for battle. It was time to show the Kalari that humanity wasn't to be. Underestimated, the first shots rang out as the alien ship fired its weapons. The Horizon shook violently as the blasts hit, but the ship held strong. Ben's hands tightened on the console, his mind sharp and focused. They had to act fast, or they wouldn't survive. The battle had begun. The ship trembled again as another blast from the Kalari ship hit the Horizon. Ben could feel the pressure of the situation building. He had been in battles before, but nothing like this. The enemy ship was huge, far larger than anything Earth had ever faced in combat. And yet the Horizon wasn't going to back down. The crew was ready. They had no choice but to fight. "Report, Lieutenant Hayes," Ben shouted, trying to keep his voice calm amid the chaos. "We've sustained some damage to the outer hull," Captain Megan said, her voice steady. "Shields are holding, but they won't last long if we don't respond." Ben's mind raced. He needed a plan. The Kalari were mercenaries, and they were not afraid of a fight. If they wanted to destroy the Horizon, they would do it without hesitation. But he wasn't about to let that happen. Not while there was breath in his body. "Return fire," Ben ordered. "Aim for their weapon systems. We have to disable their guns before they do more damage." "Firing," Megan said as she worked the controls. The ship's weapons flared to life, sending a barrage of energy blasts toward the Kalari ship. The shots hit their mark, but the enemy ship's shields absorbed the impact with little more than a brief flicker. Ben cursed under his breath. It was no surprise that the Kalari had advanced technology, but it was still frustrating. They had to find a way to outsmart them, not just outgun them. He needed to buy more time to come up with a strategy. "Jason," he said, turning to the communications officer, "can you get through to their ship? We need to buy some time, maybe open a dialogue." Jason nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. "I'll try, Captain." For a moment, the bridge was filled with the hum of the ship's systems and the sound of weapons fire. Ben watched as his crew worked quickly, knowing that time was running out. The Kalari weren't playing games. They had come for blood, and if they weren't careful, they would get it. "Captain," Jason said, his voice tight, "they're not responding to our hails. The transmission is being jammed." "Great," Ben muttered under his breath. "Megan, keep firing. We need to keep them occupied while we figure out a way to break through that jamming." Megan's fingers moved across the console, sending another volley of energy blasts at the Kalari ship. It was clear that the Horizon was holding its ground. But it wasn't enough to overpower the enemy. Captain Megan said after a moment, her tone more urgent. "We have a problem. Their weapons are powering up again. It looks like they are preparing for a heavy assault." Ben's heart raced. The Horizon could withstand some damage, but a heavy assault would likely breach their defenses. They needed to do something fast. "We need to disable their engines," Ben said, his voice calm but firm. "If we can stop them from moving, we can outmaneuver them." Megan nodded, already working on it. The Horizon was fast, but the Calorie ship was bigger and more powerful. To win this fight, they needed to be smart. And being smart meant using the Horizon's speed and agility to their advantage. As the Calorie ship prepared to fire again, Ben's mind raced. There had to be something else they could do. Something the Calorie weren't expecting. He remembered the warning they had received, the chilling message. It had come through before the battle even began. Never strike at humans. They won't ever let you escape. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. A plan began to form in Ben's mind. It was risky, but it might just work. If the Calorie were underestimating humanity, they would regret it soon enough. "Megan," said his voice sharp, "are you able to get a lock on their engine core?" She didn't hesitate. "I can, Captain. But I'll need a few more seconds to line it up." Ben took a deep breath. This was it.
Do it.
Hit their engine core. Disable their movement. He turned to Jason. "Get ready to send a message. We're going to tell them exactly who they're dealing with." Jason didn't need to be told twice. He was already working on a message to send to the Calorie ship. The transmission would be short and simple, but it would carry a message loud and clear. The humans were not to be underestimated. Megan's fingers danced over the controls as she aimed at the Calorie ship's engines. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Everyone was focused, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Locked on," Megan said. "Ready to fire?" "Do it," Ben said. Megan pressed the button, and the Horizon's weapons fired once again. This time, with all their power, aimed directly at the Calorie ship's engines. The shot hit its mark, and there was an explosion of light as the Calorie ship's engines were damaged. The ship lurched. Its movements became erratic as the damage spread. The Calorie ship was no longer able to maintain its position. It drifted, unable to move with any real purpose. Ben watched as the ship's shields flickered, weakened by the damage. They had bought themselves a moment. Jason wasted no time. He quickly composed the message and sent it out to the Calorie ship. "This is Captain Ben Carter of the Earthship Horizon," the message began. "We've just shown you a small taste of what humanity is capable of. You were warned. We are not like the others. We do not back down, and we will never let you escape." There was a long silence after the message was sent. Ben felt his heart pounding in his chest. The Calorie had been warned. Now, it was up to them to decide how they wanted to respond. The seconds ticked by. The Horizon sat in space, hovering in front of the Calorie ship, waiting. And then finally, the response came. The Calorie ship's weapons powered down, and its communications officer appeared on the screen once more. The alien's yellow eyes narrowed as it spoke. "You may have won this battle, human," the Calorie officer said, its voice low and dangerous. "But this is far from over. You have made a mistake." The transmission ended, and the Calorie ship turned away. Retreating into the darkness of space, Ben let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The immediate danger had passed, but he knew this was far from over. The Calorie would be back. They had made it clear. But humanity had also made it clear that they were not going to back down. The Horizon was damaged, but it was still alive. And so was humanity. As long as there was breath in their lungs, they would fight. They would never let anyone alien or otherwise forget the warning they had received. The Horizon drifted silently in the cold emptiness of space, its engines weakened but still functioning. The battle had been intense, but for now, the ship was safe. Ben Carter stood on the bridge watching as the damage reports came in. The ship had taken a few hits, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. The crew was exhausted, but they had done their job. The Calorie had retreated, but Ben knew this was just the beginning, Captain, Lieutenant Megan Hayes said, her voice calm but tense. "I've sent the damage reports to engineering. We'll need about an hour to patch up the worst of it. The rest can be handled in a few days." Ben nodded, taking a moment to breathe. "Good. We'll need to be ready for anything. The Calorie won't just give up. They'll come back, and next time, they'll come harder." Megan looked at him, her expression serious. "Do you think they'll bring reinforcements?" Ben thought for a moment. They'll have to. The Calorie are mercenaries, and they won't take being beaten lightly. They'll find someone else to help them. Maybe the Draxians. The Draxians were an even more dangerous species than the Kalari, a brutal alien race, feared for their strength and their thirst for conquest. If the Kalari were to ally with the Draxians, it could mean real trouble for humanity. Ben had heard rumors about the Draxians' growing interest in Earth, but he hadn't thought they would get involved so soon. He was wrong. Now, it was only a matter of time before the Draxians came looking for a fight. "Megan," Ben said, his voice steady, "I need you to prepare for the worst. Get our weapons systems ready. If the Draxians are coming, we won't be caught off guard." "I'm on it, Captain," Megan replied, already turning to her console. Ben looked around at his crew. They were all working quickly, but he could see the weariness in their eyes. They had been through a lot, and they were ready for a break. But there was no time for rest. "Not yet," Ben said, turning to the communications officer. "Keep an eye on any incoming transmissions. If the Kalari or the Draxians try to make contact, we need to know right away." Jason nodded. "Understood, Captain?" Ben paced the bridge, his mind racing. The Kalari were only the first to attack. The real danger was the Draxians. They had a reputation for being ruthless, and they didn't hesitate to wipe out entire civilizations if they thought it would benefit them. If the Draxians were coming, humanity would need to be ready for a fight, like no other. Hours passed in tense silence as the crew of the Horizon worked to repair the ship. Ben kept his eyes on the view screen, waiting for any sign of the enemy. He knew that at any moment the Kalari could return, or worse, the Draxians could show up. He wasn't going to let his guard down, not for a second. Then, at last, the silence was broken. Jason's voice came through, cutting through the quiet tension. "Captain," Jason said, his voice tense. "We've got something." A transmission from the Kalari. Ben's heart skipped a beat. He stepped forward. "Put it through, Jason." The view screen flickered to life, and the cold yellow eyes of the Kalari officer appeared once again. This time, there was no hiding the anger in its expression. The alien's voice was low, threatening. "You may have won the battle, human," the Kalari officer said, "but you will not win the war. The Draxians are on their way. And when they arrive, your planet will burn." Ben's grip tightened on the console. He had expected this, but hearing it out loud still sent a chill down his spine. The Draxians were coming. There was no more time to prepare. The fight was about to get much harder. "You've been warned," the Kalari officer continued, its tone mocking. "You'll never escape the Draxians, and you'll never defeat us." The transmission ended as quickly as it had started. The screen went dark, and the ship was once again filled with silence. Ben turned to his crew. "Get ready. The Draxians are coming, and we're going to show them what humans are made of." The crew sprang into action. Megan worked quickly to finalize the ship's weapons systems, while Jason monitored the communications channels for any sign of the approaching enemy. Ben knew they didn't have much time. The Kalari had made it clear that they were bringing the Draxians with them. And when the Draxians arrived, there would be no mercy. The fight for Earth was about to begin. An hour passed, but nothing came. The silence was unbearable. Ben couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the enemy was just waiting for the right moment to strike. He knew the Draxians wouldn't hesitate. They would come at full force, and they would take no prisoners. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jason spoke again. "Captain," he said, "I've detected a fleet. They're coming out of hyperspace." "It's the Draxians." Ben's heart sank. He had known it was only a matter of time. But now they were here. The fight had come to Earth. The Draxians had arrived. The view screen flickered to life once more. And Ben saw the massive Draxian fleet appearing in the distance. Their ships were huge, built for destruction, and there were dozens of them, more than Ben could count. The sight of them sent a wave of fear through the crew, but Ben refused to show any weakness. He stood tall, his face set in determination. "This is it," Ben said, his voice low but strong. "This is what we've been training for. We are not going to let them take our home." He turned to Megan. "Fire up the engines. Get us into position. We're going to hit them before they even know what's coming." Megan nodded, her fingers flying across the console. The Horizon's engines roared to life, and the ship began to move, its weapons charging for the fight ahead. Jason kept his eyes on the incoming fleet. "Captain, they're closing in fast. They're preparing to attack." "Then let's give them a taste of what humanity is capable of," Ben said. "We fight together. We win together." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, and the Horizon surged forward, ready to face the Draxians head-on. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and Ben Carter knew one thing for sure: humanity would not go down without a fight. The Draxian fleet loomed large on the view screen, its ships cutting through space like predators hunting their prey. Each vessel was a fortress of destruction, far bigger and more powerful than anything the humans had ever faced. The sight of the fleet made the crew of the Horizon tense, but it also made them determined. They knew the stakes. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for their planet. For everything they held dear, Captain Ben Carter stood at the front of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the Draxian ships. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The future of humanity rested on their shoulders. There was no turning back now. They had to fight, and they had to win. Captain Lieutenant Megan Hayes said, her voice calm but urgent. "They're almost in range. Our weapons are ready, but the Draxians are already charging their weapons." Ben nodded, his mind racing. He knew the Draxians wouldn't hesitate. They had come to conquer, to destroy, and they would do whatever it took to wipe out humanity. The Horizon was fast, but it wasn't as powerful as the Draxian ships. They had to use their speed and agility to their advantage. To strike before the Draxians could get a clear shot. "Prepare to engage," Ben said, his voice steady. "Megan, get us into position. We need to hit them hard and fast." Megan's hands flew over the controls, guiding the Horizon through space with a precision that only years of experience could bring. The ship dodged incoming fire, weaving through the Draxian fleet as it closed in. The enemy ships fired their weapons, but the Horizon was too quick, dodging each blast with ease. It was a dance, a deadly game of cat and mouse. Jason, communications officer, kept a close watch on the incoming signals. "Captain," he said, his voice tense, "they're coordinating their attacks. It's like they're waiting for us to make a mistake." Ben's heart raced. The Draxians were experienced fighters, and they were playing with a level of strategy that the Horizon hadn't faced before. But they were underestimating one thing: humanity's ability to think on its feet, to adapt and improvise. The Horizon wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of everything humanity stood for. It would not go down without a fight. "Hold steady," Ben said. "We have one shot at this. When we're in range, fire everything we've got." Megan nodded, her eyes focused on the view screen. The Draxian fleet was closing in fast, but the Horizon was faster. It was a risky move, but they had no choice. They had to get close enough to launch their attack, and they had to do it before the Draxians could get their weapons in line. Captain Megan said, her voice tight with concentration, "We're in range. Weapons are locked on." Ben nodded. "Fire." The Horizon's weapons lit up as they unleashed a torrent of energy at the nearest Draxian ship. The blast hit its mark, and the ship's shields flared brightly before collapsing. The Draxian ship shook, its hull cracking under the intensity of the attack. But the Draxian fleet didn't back down. They returned fire, their weapons hitting the Horizon with a force that rattled the entire ship. Ben braced himself, his hands gripping the console. The ship shook again, and warning lights flashed on the control panel. "Damage report," Ben barked. "We've lost some power to the shields," Megan replied quickly, "but we're still holding. We've got enough left to keep going." Ben's eyes flickered to the view screen. The Draxian ships were coming closer, and their weapons were charging again. They had only seconds before the next volley of fire hit them. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. "Jason, get me a direct line to the fleet's commander," Ben ordered. Jason worked quickly, his fingers moving across the console. The screen flickered, and then the image of a tall, muscular alien appeared. Its face was covered in scars, and its eyes burned with an intensity that sent a chill down Ben's spine. This was the Draxian commander. It looked as though it was ready for blood. "This is Captain Ben Carter of the Earthship Horizon," Ben said, his voice steady despite the tension. "We are not your enemies. We are not here to fight. But if you force us, we will not stop until we've driven you off our planet." The Draxian commander's lips curled into a twisted smile. "You speak bravely, human, but it will not save you. Earth is ours for the taking. You cannot stop us." Ben didn't flinch. He had heard that kind of talk before, from every enemy who had ever underestimated humanity. The Kalari had thought the same thing, and now they were retreating. The Draxians might be stronger, but they didn't understand what made humans different. Humans didn't give up. They didn't surrender. And most importantly, they never backed down. "We're not giving up," Ben said, his voice cold and resolute. "And we will fight you until the very end." The Draxian commander's eyes narrowed. "You will regret this." The transmission ended, and the horizon was once again left in the silence of space. The Draxians had made their move, and now it was time for humanity to make theirs. Ben turned to his crew, his expression hardening with resolve. "Megan," he said, "we need to hit them again. This time, we go for their command ship. Take it down, and the rest of the fleet will fall apart." Megan didn't hesitate. She turned the ship, lining up the shot. "On your command, Captain." Ben nodded. "Fire." The horizon unleashed another volley of energy at the Draxian command ship, the blast hitting the ship with incredible force. The command ship rocked, its shields flickering before finally collapsing. It wasn't enough to destroy the ship, but it was a significant hit. The Draxians' coordination began to falter, and their movements grew more erratic. Ben could see the change in their formation. The Draxians were losing their focus, and it was their moment to strike. "Megan, push us forward. We can't let them regroup. Hit them with everything we've got." Megan nodded, her hands moving with purpose. The horizon surged forward again, dodging fire as it closed in on the Draxian fleet. The battle was far from over, but the humans were proving that they were not to be underestimated. For every blow the Draxians struck, the crew of the horizon responded with tenacity and determination. They fought not just for survival, but for the future of their planet. The horizon had been built for moments like this. Its crew had been trained for this kind of fight. The Draxians had come to Earth thinking they would conquer it with ease. But they had underestimated the strength of humanity. And now, the Draxians would learn that humanity would never give up. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, the fight for Earth had only just begun. Tilda. The battle raged on in the cold void of space, the horizon and the Draxian fleet locked in a deadly struggle. The Draxians had come with the intent to conquer Earth, but the humans aboard the horizon had other plans. Every second of the fight brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. The humans were relentless, and the Draxians, though powerful, were not prepared for what humanity could bring to the table. Captain Ben Carter stood at the helm of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view screen as the battle unfolded. The Draxian ships were massive and heavily armed, but the horizon was nimble and fast. Ben knew they couldn't win this fight with brute force alone. They had to be smart, use every advantage they had. "Megan," Ben said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We need to focus on their weaker ships. We can't take on the whole fleet head-to-head. Break their formation." Megan Hayes nodded, her fingers flying across the control panel. She was in control of the ship's movement, steering the horizon with incredible precision. The Draxians were closing in, their ships firing relentlessly. But Megan's quick maneuvers kept the horizon one step ahead. "We're doing it," Captain Megan said. "But they're getting closer." "We can't keep dodging forever." "You don't need to," Ben said. "We just need to give them one more surprise. Jason, get ready to send the signal." Jason, the communications officer, looked up from his console. "What kind of signal, Captain?" Ben turned to face him, his expression hard. "A message. A final warning. The Draxians think they can intimidate us, but they haven't seen what humans can really do. We're not backing down. It's time they knew that." Jason nodded, already preparing the transmission. He understood what Ben meant. The Draxians needed to know that humanity wasn't going to let them win. The humans weren't going to be another conquered race in the galaxy. They would fight until the very last breath. The horizon continued to weave through the incoming fire from the Draxian ships, avoiding the blasts that came too close. The ship's shields were holding, but they were slowly weakening. Ben knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to turn the tide of the battle, and fast. Fire, Ben commanded. Megan pulled the trigger, and the horizon's weapons erupted, sending a barrage of energy blasts toward one of the Draxian ships. The blast hit its mark, and the ship's shields flickered before collapsing. The Draxian ship shuddered, its power systems failing as the blast tore through its hull. The ship's weapons stopped firing. It slowly began to drift away from the battle. Ben allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but there was no time to celebrate. The remaining Draxian ships were still closing in, and they were angry. The Draxians had not expected the humans to put up such a fight, and now they were out for blood. "Captain," Megan said, her voice tight, "they're bringing everything they've got. We're going to have to make a run for it soon." Ben's eyes narrowed as he watched the Draxian fleet closing in. The enemy was regrouping, forming a tighter formation to concentrate their firepower. Ben knew they had to act quickly, or they would be overwhelmed. "Jason," Ben said, turning toward the communications officer, "send the message now." Jason didn't hesitate. He quickly typed in the command, and a powerful transmission was sent out to the entire Draxian fleet. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of everything humanity had fought for. "This is Captain Ben Carter of the Earth ship Horizon." The message began, "We have fought you and your mercenaries to show you that we will not be conquered. We will fight for our world, for our future, and we will never surrender. The humans will not be your slaves. We will never let you escape." The message was brief, but its impact was powerful. It was a declaration of war, a promise that no matter how strong the Draxians were, humanity would never back down. Ben could see the effect it had on the Draxian fleet. Their movements slowed and their formations faltered as they processed the message. For a brief moment, the Draxians hesitated, unsure of how to respond. It was a sign of weakness, and it was all the opening the horizon needed. "Now," Ben shouted. Megan pressed the control panel. The horizon surged forward, firing its weapons with renewed intensity. The ship cut through the Draxian fleet, targeting the weaker ships at the edges of their formation. One by one, the Draxian ships were destroyed, their shields collapsing under the intense barrage of fire. But even as the Draxian fleet began to break apart, the remaining ships fought back with everything they had. The horizon was fast, but it wasn't invincible. The Draxians were determined to crush them, and they weren't going to give up easily. The battle continued, each shot fired, each blast exchanged, bringing the two sides closer and closer to their breaking points. Ben's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the Draxian ships falter, one by one. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The horizon dodged another blast, its shields flickering from the impact. The ship was taking damage, but it wasn't stopping. Humanity wasn't giving up. Not today, not ever. The final blow came when the last of the Draxian ships was disabled. Their leader, the massive flagship, began to drift, its weapons power failing, its shields flickering. The Draxian fleet was broken. They had been beaten by the humans, by the horizon. Ben exhaled slowly, his heart still racing. The battle was over. The Draxians had been driven off Earth, but he knew this was only a temporary victory. The galaxy was vast, and there were always new threats on the horizon. But for now, humanity had one. "Damage report," Ben said, his voice hoarse. Megan quickly looked over the consoles. "We've lost some weapon systems, and the shields are down to 30%, but we're still operational." "We made it, Captain." Ben nodded, relief flooding over him. "Good work, everyone. You all did great." The crew of the Horizon was exhausted, but they had done the impossible. They had fought back against a superior enemy and had come out on top. The Draxians had thought they could crush humanity, but they had underestimated the strength, the courage, and the will of the human race. As Ben looked around at his crew, he knew they had proven something important today. They had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how dark the odds, humanity would never back down. They would fight. They would survive. And they would always be ready for whatever came next. Tilda.